Hello, Abigail here with the astrology of this week. This week, just a heads up, is a red letter week for Venus. So this week is very much all things relational, interconnection, values. In a sense, for me, there's also in Venus a bit of ambition. What we desire, we go after, the things that we aspire to. And this week is heavy on that because Venus has entered Leo. It entered Leo last week, but now we're finally getting to its connections with all of the great outer planets, which, as you may or may not know, are all in places where they aspect fire signs. And Leo is, in fact, a fire sign. So, just a heads up that that is the primary focus of this week. Your relationships will be in high relief. Um, if you are single, this can be a reversal of that. It can also be the other way around if you are with someone. So just know this is a big week. Obviously, it depends on where it is in your chart. I will say this: if you are genuinely happy and secure in your relationship, you should be fine. I will say, if you have any doubts, though, there is a Pluto opposition. I find with Pluto oppositions and conjunctions, different ways, similar stuff, we get revelations about the people we are connected to. And so if you think someone's hiding something, now is the week to look. And also, it doesn't have to be romantic. It can be coworkers, it can be friends. Also, very much depends on where this falls in your chart. So just be aware of those things. Anyways, we'll start off on Monday, where Venus is sextile Uranus at 2 degrees. This is a supportive aspect, but still chaotic. Uranus covers chaos, shifts, change, fast shifts and changes. Um, Innovation is another thing that it does. We might see, if we're talking mundane astrology, we might see some really cool discoveries come out of this, or research when it comes to interconnected things like romance, connection. Um, I even saw something online that was just like a silly, goofy kind of research that was done that was kind of funny. Like, not necessarily like mind blowing in a serious sense, but like something that's really interesting or odd or out there. And with Venus being in a sextile, it is supportive. And so if we're talking relationships, there might be a sudden meeting, there may be a revelation of some kind, there might be a situation that kind of puts you somewhere where you're not necessarily forced, but suddenly in a position to meet with or connect with someone. Very much depends on where this falls in your chart, as always. Always go check and look where these things are in your chart. Also, I do astrology readings. So if you ever want to know anything, you can book a reading with me. But with this Venus moment, remembering that Venus is in Leo and Uranus is in Gemini, there is an ability, in my opinion, for a lot of us to get sudden visibility or unexpected visibility. But it's not going to be the thing that you think you should be known for or you think you should get visibility for. It will be something unusual, kind of like when, like, maybe someone is a specific kind of researcher or they have a very specific kind of like page online, because social media is a really easy way to like explain astrology, actually. And someone does a silly goofy video, and all of their other videos may have done better or worse or whatever, but this video just goes viral, and it is the most silly, goofy, nonsensical thing, not in any way connected to what they're really known for. And this gives them sudden visibility. It's very kind of ha ha tee hee, this aspect. Like, you will get good things out of it, but it's not going to be like the good supportive stuff you thought was going to happen. It's going to happen in a way that you could never imagine. If you think about Uranus as the archetype of the fool in the tarot, it's very much kind of like anything goes. If you want to harness this aspect, it is about just kind of throwing paint at the wall, like putting stuff out there, not taking it too seriously. When you are connecting with people, not coming in with a serious mindset would be helpful. Like, be respectful and things like that. But like, if you're going on a date this week, going into it with like, oh, anything could happen. It could be just a flash in the pan. It could be something else. I'm not going to tie too much to it. That is a better way to harness this energy, because I think if you hold it loosely, it has the capacity to actually be incredibly supportive, but in such a way that we're like, and I never would have thought that would happen that way. So it actually is kind of fun. I think it's also nice to start off this way because by the time we get to the middle of the week, things are a bit more serious. We hit Wednesday and then we have Venus trine next Neptune. I actually really enjoy this. Is it a little delulu? Absolutely. But delusion is sometimes necessary, let's be real. And with Venus in Leo and Neptune in Aries, there is an ability to connect. This is also a very spicy aspect. If you have, a spicy, intimate life, this is a time to introduce something fun and new. Um, it's the time to try psychic intimacy, maybe with Neptune, or to express your love in a way that is wordless, so through song or poetry or art, or to connect with others through means that are not the typical and are not the obvious with Neptune. This can also be a great time to have collective things happening if you want to do a collective spell, if you want to create a group at this time. I honestly think it's not a bad time, especially since on this same day we have Venus opposed Pluto, and so you're going to tell very quickly who is a suitable fit for the group and who is not. Um, but this Venus trine Neptune to me is a very good time to channel, to explore things that are esoteric and that are psychic, um, to kind of release the need for things to be a certain way, which very much plays into the Venus sextile. That's kind of the unexpected way it would happen. And with Neptune, it's like the universe possibly and very likely has more for you if you would just allow this deep, rich energy to come in, and the ancient Neptunian energy to come in and support the energy of the unknown, the energy of things that are destined to be. And with Neptune and Aries, which is fairly dry, there is also an element, weirdly, with this that I find that Neptune and Aries, grounding is not the right word. I'll say that. It's not the right word. But it's almost like because the water is low in the creek, you can stand up in it and move around. You're not being swept away by the current, but because of that Aries energy. And so there is actually an ability to participate, I find, in psychic energy while actually keeping your feet quite well on the ground, which while there's a lot of other issues with Neptune and Aries, that's one that I'm enjoying where you can stay grounded, which was not quite definitely not the case in Neptune, in Pisces, where you were submerged, drowned, and sunk to the bottom of the ocean. And so in this moment, it is a time to harness the magic of the unknown, to explore past lives, to do any kind of this kind of working to improve our relational life, to improve our connections, to attain our hopes and dreams and our goals. Now, on this day, I have mentioned we do have Venus opposing. And I find when Venus opposes Pluto, the sun is another sign, Mercury, not so much Mars, in my opinion, but there is a form of the unknown that comes to the surface here. And in relationships, I'll just be frank, this is a huge signature for people finding out someone's cheating, if we're talking romance. But it doesn't have to be cheating. It doesn't necessarily have to be that at all. It can be, a friend not telling us the truth, or finding something out about someone and being like, I would never have put those two things together. I would never imagine that to be the case. With all astrological stuff, it can be as serious or as non-serious. It really depends on who you are. But with Venus opposed Pluto, if you are in a situation of any relational kind that you are not happy with, this will amplify it. If you are afraid of some form of outcome in a relationship, whether you are single or not, whether this is romantic or not, those fears will be amplified, and some of them I do believe will manifest. Now, they may not manifest now, they may actually manifest when the sun goes into opposition fully, but you are getting the tingles of something not being quite right in some of your relationships. Now, if you have recently, I will say this, done a purge, this is a moment where there might be great insight and an ability to connect with the people you've been wanting to connect to. So I don't want to say it's all doom and gloom and people lying and all these things, because it doesn't have to be. But know that this is the energy of fear, this is the energy of deception. It's also just the energy of like if you are with someone, friendship, family, whatever, if you're in a close relationship with someone and you are not meant to be in this connection for longer than a certain period of time, but you have been pushing it, this will start to show the cracks. This will start to be like, so we've stayed too long. So we need to move forward, or at the very least look at this connection honestly rather than creating a fantasy around it, which is also technically something that Venus trine Neptune can do. So this is also a day of conflicting energies. If you want to be Delulu, you can be with Neptune trine Venus, but with the Venus Pluto opposition, you are going to be dragged back into reality, and maybe not even reality, but into your fear of something happening, your fear of loss, your fear of abandonment, your fear of an inevitable doom. Um, Also, if we are talking romance and like longer term partnership, single, not single, whatever, Venus Pluto oppositions very much can test the quality of a relationship. Doesn't mean it's over, just means it can be tested. So if you are partnered, this is an excellent day to kind of take stock of your relationship, what you want, what are your fears, what have you not worked through. This is also an excellent time to get into couples therapy or any kind of therapy, honestly. This can also really crack open family issues. This moment can be a time when past infidelity can come up. If someone gets a DNA test, they find out that they're not technically related to one of their parents. That type of drama is very much Venus Pluto opposition coded. And like I said, it doesn't necessarily mean it all comes to light right now. I think the sun will shed a beam upon it, and that will happen in the first few days of Leo season, so mid July. But just know that this is a time that calls for discernment, and it can be easy to go to one extreme or another. It can go to the extreme of like la 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 la, I'm not listening, everything's okay, Venus trine Neptune, or everything's bad, everything's over, Venus opposition. And so it's important to be grounded at this time and to, buckle in and be like, what is really important in this moment? What do I need to know? What are the conversations that I need to have? Also, this is a call to closer connection, to strengthening bonds. Um, it's a great day to call up someone that you haven't talked to in a while but really miss. Um, but do recognize that this is just a very spicy week for feelings, connections, relationships. People are going to be on edge. You're also going to have people who are absolutely on the Delulu juice, who are like, I will say, especially if you're on any social media, I think, especially coming right after the Venus Jupiter conjunction, I think we're going to see a lot of people dropping their booze, which is really gorgeous and beautiful. But then we're also going to see not necessarily the same people, but we're also going to see a stream of people raving about someone or talking about a new connection or talking about an old connection, and then very quickly after seeing some kind of breakdown in connection or communication that is also pretty visible, because these big outer planets tend to, in my opinion, put a lot of stuff to the surface because they're like, look, this is the collective energy that's happening. So just be aware that like people are going to be picking up and dropping off partners right and left at this time. If it's you, just be tender with yourself and with others and do things as ethically as possible. But when it comes to family and friends, it's kind of the same thing of like people talking about, oh, this is my bestie, this is my favorite person, and then very shortly after being like, and then this person betrayed me, or and then I remembered why we weren't friends, we stopped being friends. That type of energy. So yeah, very heightened when it comes to relationships. There has been a kind of rush of people breaking up. I think we're going to continue to see that, at least in my practice and some of my fellow astrologers. We've been seeing the breakups coming in fast and hot, or situations where I, as an astrologer, I'm doing a reading and I'm like, oh, it's a miracle y'all are still together, which is not a compliment. Um, well, that's actually not a compliment, but it's not me being like, oh, yay, wow, you fought so hard. It's more like, why are we still accepting these behaviors or participating in this when it doesn't sound like either person is feeling very happy about it? Um, then on Friday, we have Chiron entering Taurus. Now, Chiron will retrograde back into Aries, I believe, in September, and then in early 2027, it will officially go into Taurus till 2034. Well, 2033, and then it has another retrograde, and then officially in 2034, it will be in Gemini. So we have a minute here, about what, eight-ish? Is my mathing, guys? Yeah, 8-ish years with Chiron and Taurus. Chiron and Taurus has a lot to do with survival and the ways in which we survive environmental and physical things in order to make it through life. I will also say with Taurus, it's going to have a lot to do about the body, the ways in which trauma and physical experiences and illnesses and deprivations and childhood affect the body and cause the body to experience trauma and to struggle to heal itself. Um, in the US, I absolutely think this is the official complete, not that it's even functioning at all here in the US, breakdown of healthcare and what we have to do about it. I think also with Chiron and Taurus, we are going to start to see, even though people are going to try to hide it, because that's kind of a Chiron thing of people kind of ignoring the actual problem, um, of people recognizing the consequences of things like long COVID and not taking things seriously. We're also going to see the rise in pandemics and things like that, in my personal opinion, with Chiron and Taurus. Also, because we have Neptune in Aries, and inflammatory diseases are going to be off the chart. They already are. They were already caused by other things happening. COVID, the pressures of the society we live in, our environmental factors. So a lot to do with trauma in the body. With Chiron and Aries, it was trauma to the self, to the idea of self, to how we move forward and move through life. And with Taurus, it's like trauma to our physical form, trauma and the physical harm it causes us. I also think with Chiron and Taurus, we are going to see a lot about prison abolition, which is very good, and also about the idea of like imprisonment and modern day slavery and stuff overall, the idea of restriction on the body and the harm that it causes to not just the our personal psyche but the collective psyche, because Taurus acts as a whole and is very physical. And then also how the trauma to our bodies then affects our relationships, because Taurus is ruled by Venus. You see the full circle here. And I find it interesting that, Chiron is entering Taurus while Venus is basically going through a barrage of outer planet connections that are going to be having us spinning like tops. So it's going to be a big shift. I think it's one of those shifts where some people don't like to work with Chiron, are going to ignore it, but it's going to be so palpable that I think Chiron moving into Taurus might win some more people over. And the thing is, you don't have to work with certain signs, but Chiron has always been such a visceral presence to me. I learned about Chiron pretty early on because Chiron gained a lot of visibility around the time I started learning astrology. And technically, Chiron is a planetoid. Get it right, folks. They are too big to be an asteroid and too small to be a planet. And also what I love about Chiron, this is a fun little fact, is that Chiron's orbit moves between Saturn and Uranus. And so Chiron, this idea of psychology and studying the human consciousness, is a bridge between the 7 traditional planets and the outer planets. So Chiron and the study of Chiron and the themes that Chiron talks about, the harms and the traumas and the psyche, that is the bridge to these broader collective themes and us being able to put ourselves in the context of the struggle of humanity, but also the way in which the human mind and soul evolves. So anyways, little fun side note about Chiron, one of my favorites. And then Sunday, we have the summer solstice, blessed summer solstice. It is when the sun is the strongest. It is the longest day of the year. It is on the 21st of June. And it is also Cancer season. So happy birthday to all of my Cancer sons. And if you have any Cancer placements, they will be getting shown upon by our lovely solar being. I always encourage folks with the summer solstice to have picnics, to, at least obviously in the northern hemisphere, to have picnics, to have fun, to participate in frolicsome activities. Like, enjoy. I always encourage enjoying these corners of the year where our ancestors across multiple cultures celebrated the holiday that is the longest day of the year. And it kind of connects us ancestrally and physically to the kind of vast collection of ancestral knowledge and magic and wisdom to celebrate and connect to these holidays um, or high days. On this same day, interestingly enough, because the sun is going into Cancer, we instantly have a sun sextile Chiron, which I think is also going to set off this Chiron transition pretty broadly, well, not broadly, brightly. And there is a support. The sun is here to support Chiron's entrance into Taurus. And I think a lot of folks are going to have a lot of courage on this day, a lot of ability to stand up for ourselves. I think, especially with the other astrology happening, that is going to be fairly destabilizing, depending on where you are. There is an element of coming to terms with or standing up for oneself in the midst of this new energy. And so, big encouragement on sitting with yourself that Sunday, on enjoying that energy, on looking back, because we will be back in Aries for a minute later this year, but looking back at Chiron, which I think was about 7 years. I have to go back and look. Chiron's is around 7 or 8 years, but it changes. It doesn't have like an exact orbit, like of specific days. It can shift depending on the way it's moving, at least from what I've studied about it. Anyways, think about the last 7 or so years and the things that have shifted and changed and the ways in which you've grown, and specifically when it comes to trauma, when it comes to standing up for ourselves in the context of trauma, when it comes to our trauma responses, fight, flight, freeze, fawn, those things. How have you changed? How have you been different? Even talking about this right now, I was looking at the astrology of a day this week when I was out in public reading tarot, and someone came and started SEXing, um, harassing clients. And if you don't know, I was raised in a very abusive household. I tend to fawn, but not in a typical way. I tend to be very good about talking myself out of situations, keeping things calm, um, making even the worst of people feel comfortable so that they don't cause harm. And guess what, folks? 6 years of New York poured out of my body, and I cursed that fucker out in public, top of my lungs. And it might not seem like a victory, but for someone who has struggled with immediate responses to stimulus because of trauma, it was a very chironic moment for me, especially since Chiron has been transiting my Mercury for a minute now, to let this person have it. Now, did they change their behavior and did they continue to be a complete piece of garbage and did no one help? And were the, security at the place I was doing, and then the cops, which we didn't call them, the people who were supporting this person harassing women and queer folks, called the cops on us for telling him to get out of our space and to stop sexually harassing people. Love that. And I didn't hesitate. I instantly went into fight, which is not the way I normally go to, and honestly was a new experience. I raised my voice, which is not something I normally do. I cursed, which I curse all the time, but like playfully, but like seriously. And to me, that is the kind of energy of coming to the other side of this Chiron Aries transit. And you don't have to have the same response I had, but this ability to now forcefully stand up for ourselves, to forcefully advocate in some way. It doesn't mean that you fixed all of them, nothing. And then later on, they weren't speaking to me. There's someone was speaking to someone else, and they're like, "Yeah, next time it happens, like, not, if they're yelling, don't yell." And for a second, I was like, "Did I do the wrong thing?" And then I was like, why is it up to me to make someone who is violating people in public comfortable in order to create a false sense of safety and community, because now we are pandering to a pervert and a creep. And it took a long time to get rid of that person. They hung around, called us devil worshippers and a bunch of other ridiculous stuff. They had 1,000 followers, guys, as they videotaped us without our consent. But all of this to say, this long-winded stories is, what Chiron Aries victories have you experienced? Where have you stood up for yourself? Where have you advocated for yourself? Where have you stepped up as a warrior? It doesn't mean that you had to do what I did and let it rip in public and scream at someone. But where have you harnessed your personal power? And for me, the reason it was vocal was because of my Mercury in Aries. But what is going on in Aries for you that has created a healing energy? And it may not look healed to other people, because in this society, the definition of healed is very often how subservient you can be in a capitalistic system. But how have you healed in the sense of standing up for yourself, of pushing against the grain, of not going with the kind of the stream of society, even though you are hurting and you are in pain and you are being targeted or harmed? So look back, see the ways in which you've grown, celebrate that. You know, Chiron can be a painful topic, but there is a beautiful celebration and tenderness when we have a Chironic victory, when we find our voice. And yeah, in true wounded healer fashion, I wasn't the one being attacked specifically. I was later. Um, I wasn't the one being harmed specifically. And so I stood up for others, you know, which is the me healing someone else. Um, but hopefully that leads to other people standing up for themselves, which is always the goal, at least for me. So yeah, I didn't necessarily protect myself, and I think if it had been directed at me, I would have had a harder time. But in this moment, this ability to do something and to advocate for what is right in a public space, in spite of what other people might think, in spite of other people's perception, in spite of someone else possibly then perpetrating violence on me, is a Chiron story. And so, what is your Chiron story? What has changed in you, and what have you overcome in the past 7 years that now might seem a bit more normal, or might seem like, oh yeah, I have that dog in me. But 7 years ago, 5 years ago, 3 years ago, you would have completely crumbled or not been able to do. Um, but yeah, everyone give me a little round of applause for cursing it loudly in public, and not backing down. So yeah, that's what that energy with the sun sextile Chiron is. Also, for some of you, I do think it is a new tool maybe that you will find in the next few weeks. Maybe you go into therapy, maybe you try a different kind of therapy, maybe you join a group. But there's some kind of physical action taken towards our practical healing, which I think is a sweet way to end a week that is going to be tumultuous, if not for you, because Venus is involved, for the people around you. And I know a lot of people I know who have kind of more stable charts are like, well, this didn't happen to me. And I'm like, what about the people you know? And they're like, oh yeah, they're insane. Like, people dropping left and right, relationships gone, divorces. And I'm like, yeah, you're experiencing other, and it depends on whether Venus is, you're experiencing other people's heightened astrological situations. Your chart just has a bit more grounding to it. Or you tend to experience longer periods of calm and then heightened stuff, because astrology can work like that too. So, anyways, this is the week of June 15th to June 21st. If you enjoy my readings, if you enjoy hanging out with me, please like and subscribe, share, do all of the things. Comment below if you have any questions or any comments. I love to hear from you. It always helps me, you know, feel good about the work that I do. You can affirm me. Feel good about the work that I do when I get, you know, some kind of feedback on it. But I wish you a really blessed week. I also, you know, before I go, want to say this is the kind of week that, like, the impossible can happen. But it is very much more likely to be the reverse of something versus something that you've kind of seen a progression with. That's kind of chaos we're dealing with here. So, like, if you don't have something, you'll have something. If you have something, you'll now not have something. It's that kind of like flip floppy energy versus like, oh, I'm going to get something I've been working on. No, you're going to end up with something you were not expecting. So the way to work with it is to hold things loosely and to get real tight with your guides and ancestors to try to make sure that the flip flop is in your favor. Anyways, many blessings to all of you. I will see you all later.